Hello, and welcome to Talk Relationship to Me, the show that explores some of the most important relationship topics. I'm Dr. Elana Hoffman. As a clinical psychologist, I focus on all things relationships, from dating to sex to long-term relationships to divorce. I cover it all. I use my professional lens as a psychologist as well as lived experience to cover these topics. Do you need to talk relationships? You're in the right place. On today's episode, on today's special emergency episode, I am solo covering the Summer House drama that has recently come out. So to catch up, and I understand that this is a very niche topic with a niche audience. One of the things I talk about a lot, though, is how these types of shows, reality TV, some reality TV, not all reality TV does this. Not all reality TV is created equal, folks. But some reality TV can shed such important light on people and relationships and marriage. And I often recommend that my clients watch things when I feel like what they are talking about is is relatable to some of the themes in these shows. So anyway, so that is why I'm talking about this very niche show on this podcast about relationships. And so you don't have to watch it, but I encourage you to listen, even though you might not be watching the show and you might not know exactly who the players are here, because these themes apply really broadly, and they apply to lots of things I talk about literally on a daily basis as a therapist who works with couples and individuals. And, I have a particular affinity for this show and for another Bravo show that I will start covering soon. I think it just really is important, important lessons in relationships. So anyway, to dive in. So I covered with my colleague and friend Andrew the last few episodes. And I mean, this is not intended to be a reality TV podcast, but this is what is happening right now. So I wanted to talk about it. There had been speculation about two cast members being in a relationship the last few days and who were friends on the show, and it was confirmed yesterday. They put out a joint statement basically confirming the rumors, and I had posted on my Instagram during the speculations that I think that it's probably true. And I said why from my lens as a psychologist, and it was confirmed shortly after. So, there's a lot of nuance to this, which is why I wanted to talk more at length about it. So basically, we are watching the dissolution of Amanda and Kyle's marriage, and I have talked at length about that specific thing in other episodes, that you can listen to, of course. But basically, Amanda and Kyle, their relationship devolves before our eyes, and I have lots to say about that. And so we're watching this happen in real time right now as the show is airing. And they announced, so the show wrapped in the summer, right? This is a summer show, so it wrapped in August. They announced their separation in January. And there have been speculations about her and West, who is another cast member who I've also talked about, of course, at length on the show, being romantically involved. I'm realizing that these rumors had been true for a little, had been circulating for a little while. And so I do question the timeline of all this. But basically, it was confirmed yesterday in March that Amanda and West are dating, hooking up, whatever it is that they're doing. They basically said in the statement, like, they haven't talked about it because they are trying to figure it out. And the reason why this is such a huge deal in the land of Bravo and reality TV is because Amanda has a best friend, Sierra, who dated West on the show, and they went through lots of, we watched their relationship over time, over the seasons and the reunions and things like that, West was new to the show. He and Sierra had a thing. They broke up. It seems like, she really wanted something more serious. He, you know, he has hurt her in multiple ways over the years. They didn't want the same thing. And then we see her last summer in the house kind of, being pretty cold with him. And there's lots of people were saying, like, give him another chance, be his friend. I just really didn't think that she had to be his friend. He hurt her. She can choose to act however she wants based on that. And then this season, that was last season. And then this season, as we were watching, literally as the episodes are airing right now, there's this big question of, are they going to get back together? Are they not? I personally think, and have talked about before in my other podcasts about this, that nothing has changed in terms of what he is looking for. And so, you can kind of have feelings for someone and have, a special, connection. And it doesn't mean that you should date them, because clearly they were not looking for the same things. And he really hurt her, and stuff had come out after they finished filming and at the reunion about how, him talking to the press was really hurtful. They had this really powerful conversation that Andrew and I talked about on our last recording about race, and about how people gave her a whole lot of shit for letting a white man do that to her as a Black woman, and how she has really important considerations around this that he was not aware of. And they all sat at this table at dinner and they all talked about this, and other Black cast members kind of said, this is a really important thing. And West and Amanda and, basically the white cast members, listened and seemingly heard it and said, we hear you. That's really vulnerable of you. Thank you for sharing. And they had this really important conversation about race and interracial dating that we had not yet seen on the show. And so this is really important context for all this. So basically, fast forward, and it now has come out that West and Amanda are dating, or they're doing whatever they're doing. And I posted basically about how I think this is true, because these are the types of things that happen. Betrayals happen, and people love to villainize, you know, actors. I use the term actors because this is a term that Esther Perel uses to basically de-villainize people who, betray. So people who cheat, she uses it to refer to the people that cheat as actors, and the people who are cheated on as acted upon. And I like that phrasing because I think it removes a lot of the judgment. And the truth is that, I talk to people all the time who are in unhappy situations, who are in bad situations, and who connect with other people. And it is a very human thing for betrayals and affairs to happen. And so I posted about this, which is why I was not surprised when it came to be true. Although, to be clear, this is not technically an affair, because Amanda and Kyle have already separated, although I guess they're technically still married. So, maybe it technically is, but they are clearly in the divorce process. She's not in a relationship with Kyle anymore. West is single, so technically it is not an affair. Although the big betrayal here is, of course, the friendship between Amanda and Sierra, and, West and Sierra, and how in real time right now at this moment, we're watching them maybe rekindle. West apologizing for how he's hurt Sierra in the past, saying he's missing her, saying he's into her, basically saying he wants to try again. And Sierra kind of really opening the door to that and like being pretty vulnerable about it. And so it really kind of sucks that, West and Amanda, did this and hurt her, because it's a betrayal as both her ex slash likely somebody that, quote unquote, it's complicated with, because I think that they even recently, as February, were together on the Super Bowl. People are saying that they've been hooking up. So, that is shady for sure. And that is hurtful for sure. And I have talked at length about how Sierra has been such a good friend to Amanda, and how difficult it is for a friend, to be there as a friend, to watch somebody in a terrible relationship. And Sierra, she does an amazing, beautiful job of walking the line, with supporting Amanda through this, of saying things like, you deserve better. it's really hard to watch him treat you like this. I think you're amazing. I wish you knew that about yourself, and then in the most recent episode, actually, I'm an episode behind. So 2 episodes ago, Sierra basically comes out and says, I think they should separate. And you can tell that, referring to Kyle and Amanda, and you can tell that she has been thinking this for a long time. She has just really been watching her friend be miserable. And, I, listen to the other episodes to hear my thoughts on their marriage, Kyle and Amanda. I mean, they are miserable. They were miserable. They have been miserable for years. They absolutely bring out the worst in each other. They are abusive to each other. They are dismissive. They're belittling. They hate each other. Frankly, they hate each other. They don't respect each other. It's a really, really hard to watch situation. And I imagine for Sierra, as a close friend of Amanda, it has been really hard for her to watch. And she also, at the same time, you know, doesn't tell her to leave him, isn't that direct because, as everyone knows, you can't do that, right? It's not effective. It's not helpful. And it just is going to push someone away. But you can reflect what you see. You can support, your friend in the situation, and she has done that. She's been a really good friend. And so, the response about Amanda and Wes being together now is really, quote unquote Team Sierra. They betrayed her, Amanda betrayed Sierra. She's been a good friend to her, and this is what happened. She hooks up with her ex, and so it's really been this big thing in, for people who watch the show. And as somebody who has watched the show from the beginning, watched every season, been a fan, as a therapist, as somebody who is also divorced myself, there is just continues to be so much to say on this. And it is a really, really nuanced situation. So, I, a few of the things that I want to say about it are that, yes, Amanda and West did a hurtful thing, likely. Although, I mean, we don't actually know the information that we have so far. We don't have Sierra's perspective on this. I think we can probably assume that she was not brought into the discussion, that they did not come to her, and say like, "Hey, this might be going on. We don't want to hurt you. What do you think about this?" I had talked there's another cast member, Jesse, who was interested in Sierra and sort of talked to West about it, since West and Sierra had a thing, and I had a whole conversation about that. And so, it does not appear, although again, we don't know that happened, and Sierra has not come out yet and said, "I feel hurt, I feel betrayed." Although I did see things that she unfollowed them and blocked them on Instagram. So we can sort of assume that this is hurtful, even though we don't know for sure because she hasn't said anything about it. So, the complicated thing about all of this, the super complicated thing, is that all of these things can be true at the same time. Amanda and West are not villains. They are not psychopaths. They're not sociopaths. The majority, I mean, sociopath is not really a thing. The majority of people, and of course there are exceptions, but the majority of people who betray, who have affairs, who, any types of affairs, right? Emotional, physical, are not bad people. They have found themselves in situations, and they are human beings who respond to those situations. And, there's lots to say about affairs and infidelity, and these are topics for other podcasts. But at sort of a high level, with in response to this, they, they are not bad people for this happening. I talk about proximity being, the biggest predictor of this kind of thing, work affairs, and they are colleagues, right? They work together on the show. And when you spend so much time with someone and you get to know someone and you have feelings for them, this happens. And Amanda, as I of course have talked about at length, is coming out of this terrible, terrible marriage where she feels awful about herself. People are saying she's a pick me girl, and I sort of have issues with that term. I think what is really the case is that Amanda has super low self-esteem, super low confidence. She has been in this terrible relationship for 15 years, I think, 10 years at this point. And, I mean, listen, Kyle has been the same person ever since she met him. So the red flags have been there from the beginning. This is true. I talk about this a lot anyway in relationships, with people who are struggling in relationships, kind of looking back, doing a deep dive into the history of their relationships and what flags were there from the beginning, but that is, that's what happens, right? I mean, that is how relationships go and people live and learn. Hopefully, that is the idea, right? Going from relationship to relationship is not does not give one people the time to reflect, and the time the way the stage of life that Amanda and Kyle are both in separating is a time for, a really important time if they choose to take it for growth and reflection and learning about themselves and thinking about, well, what went wrong in their marriage, because presumably neither of them want to get divorced again. No one wants to get divorced twice. I mean, no one wants to get divorced once, but things happen and then you learn from it. And if you are wanting to introspect about your role in relationships, this is a really crucial time to do so. And it's not that you can't date. And I have other podcasts about this too during this time. I think it actually is pretty important to do so, to figure that out and to figure out what you want and to gain confidence back, to realize that there are people that can be into you, especially having been treated really badly in a relationship. I mean, both Kyle and Amanda treated each other terribly. They both felt unwanted, unloved, disrespected. I mean, this is a two to tango situation. It always is. And so, for both of them to heal and move on and learn that they are, people who have things to offer and learn what that is. And there are people who will like them for who they are and be drawn to them and be attracted to them and want to have sex with them and want to spend time with them. And, all of these things, this is like a crucial learning time. And Amanda is really vulnerable to, someone giving her attention, someone caring about her. We see in this last episode, again, I'm one behind the one before, Kyle and Amanda get in this terrible fight. Kyle calls her, I think it's a fucking dumbass bitch, if I'm getting that quote right. I could be misremembering, on national television. And Amanda says, and West in particular, kind of stands up for her. And a bunch of the friends and cast members are like, should we talk? Should we say something to him? And Amanda says, no, it's not worth it. At this point, I mean, it's just a terrible situation for both of them. But West provides comfort to Amanda. He's a shoulder to lean on, as she's going through this really difficult time, this separation. And so it just makes a lot of sense that they would be together. Now, again, that does not mean that what they're doing is not hurtful to Sierra, especially, of course, given this conversation that they had had about how Wes had hurt her. The racial component of it is so important to understand and, be aware of. And then they did it again. Basically, Wes did it again. Amanda did it the first time, meaning, and by it, I mean hurting her. So all these things can be true, which is that they did not intentionally do this. I do not believe that they intentionally did this. Now, they might have knowingly done it, which is different than being intentional. You can know your actions are hurting someone and, for a number of reasons have difficulty, not engaging in that action. That does not make you a terrible person. It makes you have things to work on in your life. And I believe that Amanda has had, a history of trauma and terrible relationships that she needs to heal from. And this idea of her being a pick-me girl is really, indicative of trauma and insecurity and lack of confidence. I mean, she says it, she says it to Sierra, which is definitely heartbreaking to watch now. She says, I'm afraid that nobody's going to love me. Nobody's going to like me. I don't have anything to offer. I mean, she talks about how low her esteem and confidence and worth is, which is really, truly, it is heartbreaking to watch. I mean, for anybody to say those things about themselves. And this brings up questions for me about her history, her family of origin. I mean, all these things, right? And to stay in a relationship where this is confirmed, where she feels, you know, disrespected and stupid and not fun, right? I mean, Kyle's always telling her, you're not fun, you're not fun. Of course she's not fun. She's not fun in the context of this terrible marriage. She's not fun because, for dynamics that I talked to about in other in other podcasts, but of course she's not fun in this terrible marriage where she is put down and belittled constantly and made fun of and insulted. And she does the same thing. She hates Kyle. It's very, very clear when watching it that they hate each other. So of course one cannot have confidence and worth in a relationship where you hate each other. I mean, that just cannot happen. So she's getting out of this relationship, and this person who is kind and funny is paying attention to her. Now, another cast member, Dara, had said at one point, West is, who also dated West, who said at one point, West is great until you're falling in love with him. And I believe that to be so true. He's the kind of guy that is charming and funny and, has something to offer as a friend. But it was just very clear with his relationship with Sierra that he is limited in what he can offer as a partner. And that can change over time, and that's fine. But that is what it is. And Sierra saw that and then, opened the door to rekindle. And so, he is limited, right? And I think Dara was absolutely right in, like, he's a friend. He's someone to, like, be a friend to, and that's it, but in terms of if you're falling in love with him, he's not the guy to fall in love with. And I think that that's very wise and true. And I believe that Amanda will see that. And I do not think that this will work out, Amanda and West. I think that this is, for now, possibly what they need. And it won't work out because Amanda in particular has not taken the time to heal and reflect and understand why she stayed with someone for such a long time that treated her terribly, that treated her like shit. And this is just what we saw on camera. I mean, we don't know what it was like, when the cameras were down, right? This marriage was terrible. And they are really an example of how a terrible relationship is insidious, right? I mean, I've talked about this in other podcasts about this, where it affects everyone around you. The toxicity affects everyone around you. Everyone is kind of like talking about it. Everyone's kind of being like, what the fuck? And the effect of people who stay in that kind of situation, low self-worth and low self-esteem, like zero self-worth, is, a really harmful, difficult quality in someone to be close with, as a friend, as a lover, as a partner. You cannot have a relationship with somebody who does not have any self-esteem and confidence. And, after a relationship like that, she doesn't, and she can't. And so she, has got to figure it out. She's got to live her life, and she's got to figure it out. Again, she is not a terrible person. West is not a terrible person. I think he probably felt wanted and needed, and like he could give her something that she really needed in that moment. And this was just sort of a perfect storm of, circumstances. And I think it just illustrates the humanity of it all, right? That, like, this kind of stuff is really messy. And again, I want to reiterate, it doesn't make it okay, because it doesn't, if Sierra is really hurt and betrayed by this, then, what they're doing, although it doesn't make them psychopaths, they are hurting somebody who, has been a good friend. So I hope that, there are really crucial takeaways from this. I hope that all of them have great therapists and friends and support where they can really kind of work through all this. Sierra, she was hurt by West. She was hurt again. She was hurt by somebody who she had, by Amanda, who had given, she's given so much to. And Sierra, has gotten confident and has gotten stronger. We see it. I hope we continue to see it. And this is what happens when, you are really close with somebody who has no esteem and confidence. I mean, that's the thing. Again, Amanda, she's in these situations because of a lack of confidence and self-worth, and feeling like, she really knows herself and loves herself, and she can have people in her life that treat her well, and people who are really confident don't hurt their friends like that, I mean, and so, or at least, they talk about it or they figure it out, right? I mean, this is not the actions of somebody who is a confident, secure person. And, dating West is also not the action of somebody who is confident and a secure person, because as we've seen how he treats people that he is dating, which is not great. So, everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness and love. And Sierra, and again, while they're not terrible people, it doesn't make it okay. And it doesn't mean that Sierra has to engage with them at all. I love that I read that she unfollowed and blocked them. This is information for her as her friend Amanda and her, whatever she was with West, this is continued information, and she can do what she wants with that information. And again, the important takeaway from this is all things can be true all at the same time. And I just think it was important to give more of a nuanced perspective on this. And there really are no villains here. And again, it doesn't mean that Sierra has to engage with any of them really ever again. I mean, we don't know what's the future of the show. We don't know the reunion. She can not come to the reunion. She can not film the show. She can leave the show. She does not have to be around this. She does not have to be around people who hurt her, who knowingly, again, not intentionally, but knowingly hurt her. This is, again, not to vilify, because as I've just talked about for 25 minutes, it is complicated. But people show you who they are, right? People show you who they are, and you are allowed to walk away from something when somebody shows you who they are. And I guess, again, I don't mean that as like terrible people. They're not villains. They're not psychopaths. They're not like plotting, to destroy Sierra. That is not how this happened, I believe, because that's generally not how this happens. Betrayal in general, again, lots to say about this topic. But in terms of how it relates to this, those are my thoughts on it, which are complicated because this whole situation is very complicated. And people who judge this, the truth, again, people who judge this, people who say, I would never XYZ, I would never have an affair, I would never betray a friend, I would never, whatever, literally anything, you know, you can't say that. You cannot say never, because people have found themselves in situations that they never thought that they would be in. And it is judgmental and self-righteous to say that you would never do any of this, because you just don't know. And maybe you won't ever. But people who judge this, may have just not found themselves in the circumstances that could lead to this. And so I really encourage people to remove judgment about this whole thing, while at the same time you can set your boundaries. You can remove judgment and you can set your boundaries, right? Sierra, in an ideal perfect world, would say, they're not terrible people, but they hurt me and I don't want to engage with them anymore. Who knows where she's at, but this is a lot of the stuff I talk with my clients about, where people hurt them, and they can have compassion in the sense of understanding that they are human, and, not vilify them, and at the same time say, I'm done with this, and this is not for me, even though you might not be a terrible person. And that is often how, just what leads to breakups. There's likely no villain. That doesn't mean that there doesn't need to be introspection and reflection and change. And I do hope that Amanda and West do that, just for their own growth and development, so they can learn from all of this and grow and understand themselves, and, hopefully, become secure, confident people that will maybe eventually have, loving, equal, healthy relationships. But there is a ways to go from that. And this time that Amanda has of separating from a long-term marriage is a really vulnerable time, is a really important time. And people can do crazy shit when they are going through the divorce process, like hook up with their friend's ex. And it does not mean that they're a terrible person. It means that they need some help and they are going through it. So I hope that they do that. I hope that everyone, again, in this story gets the help that they need. I hope that this has sort of, shed some nuance on this very complicated situation that happens. I mean, it just happens. These are really important takeaways. If you're a fan of the show, just watch and learn, right? Think about how any of this shows up for you. I'll say it again. If you watching Kyle and Amanda, the dissolving of their marriage is a painful thing to watch. And there have been comments about how they're not so bad, they just have communication problems. Like, this is not true, and this is not the bar. And they hate each other, and they have a horrible, dysfunctional relationship that thankfully ended, but they have a lot to learn and recover from. Both of them have a lot of healing to do. So again, I wish everybody healing and growth from all this situation, from this whole situation, and from life's complications and messiness. And we'll see what continues, to come out about it. Thank you all for listening. This has been Talk Relationship to Me, produced by Peach Island Productions. I'm Dr. Elana Hoffman. Do you have a question about relationships? I'd love to hear from you. You can go to my website, drelanahoffman.com, and click contact, or find me on Instagram at dr.elanahoffman. That's dr.elanahoffman. You can find everything, all the info you need, including more about today's episode in the show notes. And I encourage you to watch the show and, introspect about your own life. And if any of this comes up, just think about it, right? Because that is the purpose of growth and reflection and all that. So thank you all for listening. And until next time.